The rain had just stopped when Evan drove into the quiet Portland neighborhood where he had grown up. The sky was still gray, and drops of water slid down the windows of his old car. He had been away at college for 2 years, and though it wasn't far, life had changed more than he expected. The trees looked older, the streets seemed smaller, and the house he once called home felt like a memory. As he parked in front of the familiar porch, a strange mix of comfort and nervousness filled his chest. He stepped out, stretching his back after the long drive. The porch creaked under his shoes as he climbed the steps. Through the window, he saw Clara's stepmother moving around the kitchen. She was stirring something on the stove, her hair tied loosely. The same gentle calmness surrounding her that he remembered from childhood. For a moment, he just stood there watching, not ready to knock. There was something peaceful about seeing her like that, like time had paused inside the house, when he finally opened the door. The warm scent of cinnamon and coffee met him. Claire turned, her face lighting up instantly. "Evan," she said, surprise and happiness blending in her voice. "You're here. Look at you, you've grown." He smiled, setting down his bag. "Yeah, college does that." She laughed, coming closer and wrapping him in a quick hug. It was warm and soft, but there was something unfamiliar about it, too, like the space between them had changed. When she pulled back, she studied him for a second, as if seeing not just the boy she knew, but the man he was becoming. "Your dad's on a business trip." "Hugh," she said, brushing her hair from her face. "He'll be gone a few more days." "You must be tired. Come sit. I made coffee." Evan followed her to the kitchen table. Everything looked the same, the framed family photos, the old wooden chairs. The sound of rain still dripping outside, but it felt quieter now. His father had always been loud, full of plans and opinions, but Claire carried silence differently. It wasn't empty. It was peaceful. They talked for a while about school, about his classes, and the new city he lived in. She told him about her work, about how she'd started teaching art again. Her voice carried a hint of pride, but also loneliness. She admitted that the house felt too big sometimes, too quiet. Evan nodded. He could picture it long evenings, her painting alone in that small art room by the window. As she spoke, he realized how much he had missed her. Not just her kindness, but the way she made a space feel calm. She had been the steady part of his home life after his parents' divorce years ago. His father had moved fast, marrying Claire when Evan was still a teenager. But somehow, she had never tried to replace his mother. She had just been there, patient, understanding, always careful. When she smiled, her eyes caught the light in a way that made him feel young again. "You must be hungry," she said, standing to check the stove. "I made your favorite chili and cornbread." He chuckled. "You still remember?" "Of course," she replied, her voice soft. "Some things you don't forget." They ate together while the sound of rain returned outside. Conversation came easily, laughter returning between them like it had been waiting. But underneath the comfort, Evan sensed something else, something he couldn't name. Maybe it was just the quiet house. Maybe it was the way her eyes lingered a moment too long when she smiled. Or maybe it was just that they both felt the same emptiness his father's absence had left behind. After dinner, Claire poured 2 cups of tea. I think they sat near the window, watching the rain slide down the glass. "I forgot how peaceful it is here," Evan said. She nodded. "It is. But peace can feel lonely when there's no one to share it with." Her words hung in the air for a moment. Evan looked at her but didn't know what to say. She quickly smiled as if realizing she'd said too much. "Anyway," she added lightly, "it's nice having you home again. You always brought a good kind of energy into this place." He smiled, grateful for the warmth in her tone. "It's good to be back, Claire." When the night grew deeper, Evan went to his old room. Everything was still there. The posters, the old desk, the creaky floorboard near the bed. It was strange, like stepping into another version of himself. As he unpacked his small bag, he heard the faint sound of Claire humming downstairs. The same tune she used to sing when she was cooking years ago. Lying in bed, he listened to the rain again. The world outside felt distant, almost forgotten. Inside, everything was quiet except for the occasional creak of the house. He thought about how life had changed since he left. How much he had missed simple things like this home-cooked food, quiet evenings, someone waiting for him. But there was also something new in the air, a gentle tension he couldn't explain. It wasn't bad, just unfamiliar. Maybe it was because they hadn't seen each other in so long. Maybe it was because they were both older, more aware of time passing. Before falling asleep, Evan glanced out the window. The storm clouds had cleared, revealing a faint slice of moonlight. The same moonlight touched the house, the walls, and maybe even the person downstairs who had been a part of his life in ways he hadn't fully understood before. And as his eyes closed, a thought lingered quietly in his mind. This visit might not be as simple as he expected. Something had changed, and he wasn't sure whether he was ready for it or not. Downstairs, Claire stood by the kitchen window, sipping her tea. She looked out into the night, lost in thought. The rain had stopped completely now, and the reflection of the moon shimmered on the wet porch. She smiled faintly, remembering the boy who used to leave muddy shoes at the door, and the young man who had just come home. She whispered to herself, "Go with the flow, Claire. Don't overthink it." But even as she said it, she felt a quiet warmth inside, a sense that something new had begun. Something gentle and unplanned. She didn't know what it meant, only that it felt different this time. The house, once silent, now seemed alive again. And for the first time in a long while, both of them slept peacefully, unaware of how deeply the days ahead would stir their hearts. It was only the beginning, but neither of them knew just how much this return home would change everything. The next few days moved quietly but easily. Evan settled into the rhythm of home again. He fixed the broken porch light, helped mow the lawn, and joined Claire on small grocery trips. The air between them felt calm, familiar, yet there was something new beneath a surface, an awareness that neither of them wanted to look at too closely. When his father was home, the house had always been full of business calls and noise. Now it felt softer, slower, more human. Claire spent her mornings in the art studio she had built in the spare room. The walls were lined with unfinished paintings, landscapes, faces, colors that seemed to breathe emotion. Evan often stopped by just to watch. "You always disappear in here," he said one afternoon, leaning against the doorframe. "It's where I can think," she replied, not looking up from her canvas, or not think at all. "Depends on the day." He smiled. "You make it look easy." She laughed lightly. "That's the trick. It's never easy. You just pretend it is." Evan stepped closer, curious about the half-finished painting, a lake surrounded by autumn trees. "It's beautiful," he said. "You really see the world differently." Claire finally turned to him. "Art teaches you that control is an illusion. Can't plan everything. Sometimes you have to let the paint decide where it goes." He chuckled. "That sounds like something you'd say about life." She smiled knowingly. "Maybe it is." Later that evening, when dinner was over and the dishes were drying on the counter, Claire asked if he wanted to join her in the studio again. "I'm teaching my students about expression tomorrow," she said. "You could help me test something," Evan agreed, curious. The rain had started again outside, tapping gently against the windows. She handed him a blank canvas and a brush. "Just paint whatever you feel," she said. "Don't think too much." He hesitated. "I don't really paint." "It's even better," she said with a grin. "You'll have no rules to break." Evan dipped the brush into blue paint, then stopped halfway to the canvas. "I don't know what I feel," he admitted, laughing awkwardly. Claire stepped behind him, gently placing her hand over his. "Then paint that," she whispered. Her voice was calm, close. "Uncertainty has its own color." Her guidance was soft, her touch light. Together they made a few uneven strokes, blue fading into gray. Evan's heartbeat picked up, though he didn't understand why. Claire seemed focused on the painting, unaware of the quiet storm building inside him. When she let go, he exhaled, not realizing he had been holding his breath. She looked at the canvas and smiled. "See, that's feeling. It doesn't have to be perfect." He turned slightly toward her. "You make it sound simple." "It is," she said, her tone gentle but sure. "You just have to go with the flow." He laughed under his breath. "You really like that phrase, don't you?" "Saved me more times than I can count," she said with a small smile. "You'll learn. Life is a lot easier when you stop fighting it." Their eyes met for a moment longer than either expected. There was no need to speak. The air between them carried enough. Then Claire took a slow step back and began cleaning her brushes, breaking the tension like a soft breeze. "That's enough art for today," she said, her voice steady again. As the night settled, Evan found himself thinking about her words, "Go with the flow." He had heard it before, but tonight it felt different. Maybe because it came from her. Maybe because, for the first time in a long while, he actually wanted to. The next day, Claire invited him to join her at the community art class she taught on weekends. "You can help set up," she said, pretending it was just a small favor. But he saw how her face brightened when he agreed. At the art center, Claire moved with quiet confidence. Her students admired her, not just for her skill, but for the kindness she gave so freely. Evan watched her laugh, correct brushstrokes, and encourage every hesitant painter in the room. She had a way of making people believe in themselves, and it struck him how rare that was. When class ended, they walked outside together. The air smelled like wet earth and pine. "You were amazing in there," he said. Claire laughed softly. "I just love seeing people express themselves. We all hide too much." He looked at her. "What do you hide?" She paused, smiling faintly. "Oh, plenty of things. But I'm learning not to." Evan nodded. "Maybe that's what I'm trying to figure out too." She glanced at him, her eyes warm. "You're doing fine, Evan. You just need to stop holding your breath." The words lingered in his mind the whole evening. When they got home, the house was quiet again, the smell of paint and coffee filling the air. Claire went upstairs to shower while Evan stayed behind, looking at the small canvas they had painted together. The blue and gray strokes seemed messy at first, but the more he looked, the more it made sense. It was uncertain, imperfect yet strangely peaceful. He smiled to himself, realizing that maybe that's what she meant by feeling. Later, when she came downstairs in her soft sweater, hair still damp, she saw him standing by the painting. "You kept it," she said gently. "Yeah," he replied. "I think I like it. It feels real." "Then that means it's art," she said. They both laughed quietly. The moment was simple, but it felt like it meant something more. They didn't talk about it. They didn't need to. The silence said enough before going to bed. Claire stopped by the living room, where Evan was flipping through an old photo album. "You were such a shy kid," she said, smiling at one of the pictures. "I still am," he admitted. She looked at him for a long moment. "No, you're just thoughtful. There's a difference." Her words carried warmth, the kind that stayed with him even after she said goodnight. As he lay in bed later, listening to the rain again, Evan couldn't help but feel that something inside him had shifted. He wasn't sure what it was, maybe the calm of being home, maybe the quiet connection growing between them, but he felt lighter somehow. Like he was learning to breathe again. Down the hall, Claire sat by her window, the soft glow of a lamp lighting her face. She looked at the painting they had made together earlier and smiled. There was something about Iton finished, yet honest, that reminded her of life itself. She whispered softly, as if speaking to herself, "Go with the flow." It was both a promise and a warning, though she didn't yet know which. And in that quiet night, with rain washing the world outside, clean again, two hearts, different, distant, but quietly aligned, began to understand what it meant to move gently with time, without forcing what didn't need to be forced. The air around them was still, but full of unspoken meaning, something new, fragile, and real. Neither of them could name it yet, but both could feel it growing, steady as the rain that never really stopped. The storm came suddenly that evening, sweeping across Portland with heavy rain and wind that rattled the windows. Evan and Claire had been reading in the living room when the first thunder rolled through the sky. The lights flickered twice before going out completely. leaving the house in a soft orange glow from the candles Claire had lit earlier. The storm made the world outside disappear. All that remained was the sound of rain and the faint heartbeat of quiet inside the walls. "Guess it's just us and the storm tonight," Claire said with a small smile, setting a candle on the table. The light flickered across her face, softening her features. Evan nodded. "It's kind of peaceful," he said. Listening to the steady rhythm of the rain, they sat in silence for a moment, the sound of thunder filling the spaces between their thoughts. Claire poured 2 cups of tea and slid one toward him. "You always liked the rain when you were younger," she said. "You'd sit by the window for hours watching it." "Still do," Evan said quietly. "It makes the world slow down." Sue smiled faintly. "Maybe that's what we all need, an excuse to stop rushing." The words felt heavier than they sounded. Evan studied her face, noticing the tiredness around her eyes. She wasn't old, but life had carved its quiet Marksteiny traces of strength and loneliness. For the first time, he realized how much she carried alone. "Do you ever get lonely here?" he asked. Claire looked at the candle flame. "Sometimes," she said softly. "When the house gets too quiet? When there's no one to talk to about little things?" She paused, her tone wistful. "Your father used to fill this place with noise, but lately it's just ... silence." Evan didn't know what to say. He wanted to tell her that she didn't seem alone. Not now. Not while he was here, but the words stayed inside. Another flash of lightning lit the room for a second, and thunder cracked close enough to shake the floor. Claire flinched slightly, then laughed at herself. "Still not used to storms?" she admitted. Evan smiled. "They don't bother me. They remind me that nature still has power." "Maybe that's what scares me," she replied, her voice lower now. "When things are out of my control." He looked at her, realizing how deeply that sentence reached. "You can't control everything, Claire," he said gently. "Some things just happen." She nodded, her eyes glimmering in the candlelight. I know. I just forget sometimes." The silence that followed wasn't empty, it was full of quiet understanding. The storm outside grew stronger, but inside, everything felt strangely still. Claire set her cup down and folded her hands. "Do you ever feel," she began softly, "like you're waiting for life to make sense again?" Evan thought for a moment. "Every day," he said honestly. "I keep thinking I'll figure it out once I finish school or find the right job, but it never really happens." She smiled faintly. "It doesn't. You've just learned to live with the pieces." Studied her, realizing how much wisdom she carried in her calmness. "You sound like someone who's been through a lot." Claire's eyes drifted toward the window. "We all have our storms," she said. "Some just last longer than others." Thunder rolled again, and for a brief second, the power of the storm seemed to echo the quiet one inside both of them. Evan leaned back, feeling the weight of everything unsaid pressing gently against the air. "You know," Claire said softly, "I used to think I had everything figured out. A home, a husband, a steady life. But life has a strange way of showing you that stability isn't the same as happiness." Evan hesitated. "Are you unhappy?" She met his eyes. "No," she said after a pause. "Just ... different. I've learned to find peace in small things. A cup of tea. A finished painting. The sound of rain." He nodded. "Sometimes that's all we can do." A soft laugh escaped her. "You sound older than your age," he smiled. "College changes people." "Or maybe you were always this way," she said. "Quiet, thoughtful. You just didn't know it yet." "Ah." Their eyes met for a moment, steady and unguarded. The candlelight flickered between them, and something shifted, something gentle, not spoken, but deeply felt. It wasn't about romance or desire. It was about connection, to people realizing they understood each other more than they expected. Claire took a slow breath. "You remind me of myself at your age," she said. "Always feeling too much, thinking too deeply." Evan smiled slightly. "Then maybe we're not that different." She looked at him with warmth. "No, maybe not." The thunder faded a little, leaving only the sound of rain. Claire stood and walked to the window, watching the storm wash over the garden. The reflection of the candlelight glowed in the glass. Evan joined her, standing just behind her shoulder. The air smelled like wet soil and candle wax. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "It is," he said. "Even when it's loud, there's something peaceful about it." She turned to look at him, her expression calm but searching. "That's because storms remind us we're alive," she said. "We feel them. We listen. We wait for them to pass." For a moment they simply watched the rain together, breathing in rhythm with the quiet around them. Claire closed her eyes for a second, as if letting herself rest from years of holding everything together. When she opened them, her gaze softened. "Thank you for being here, Evan," she said. "It's been a long time since the house felt alive." He smiled gently. "I'm glad I came." Lightning flashed again, followed by a final rumble of thunder. The storm was easing now, moving away toward the hills. Claire sighed and turned back toward the living room. "Looks like it's finally calming down." "Maybe we both needed that," he said. She glanced at him with a small smile. "Maybe we did." They sat back down near the candle, both lost in thought. The moment was simple, two people sitting in silence, listening to the last drops of rain, but there was comfort in that simplicity. They didn't have to talk about what was changing inside them. It was enough to just be present, to feel understood without words. When the lights finally flickered back on, Claire blinked, almost disappointed. "The magic's gone," she said lightly. Evan smiled. "Maybe not. Maybe it's just quieter now." She looked at him one last time before standing. "Good night, Evan. Good night, Claire." After she went upstairs, Evan stayed for a while, staring at the candle until the flame burned low. He felt something new inside him come, but also uncertain. It wasn't love or confusion. It was the awareness that people could meet in ways deeper than words, upstairs. Claire sat by her window again, watching the last drops fall. She thought about how the storm had felt wild, unpredictable, cleansing. For the first time in a long while, she felt understood. She whispered quietly to herself, "Go with the flow." Outside, the storm faded into soft silence, leaving the world washed clean. Inside, both hearts carried a gentle ache, the kind that comes not from sadness, but from awakening. Something had changed between them quietly, naturally, like rain turning into sunlight. Neither knew what tomorrow would bring. But for now, the storm inside them had found peace. The next morning, Portland looked brand new. The storm had washed everything clean. The trees shone with drops of silver, and the air smelled of rain and pine. Sunlight spilled through the kitchen window, turning the house warm again. Evan woke early, the memory of last night still clear in his mind. The thunder. The candlelight, Claire's voice blending softly with the storm. It had been quiet, but something deep inside him had changed. He didn't know what to call it, only that he felt closer to her than ever before. When he came downstairs, Claire was already in the kitchen, standing by the counter in a light sweater, stirring a pot of coffee. She looked peaceful, almost glowing in the morning light. "You're up early," she said, smiling when she saw him. "Couldn't sleep much," Evan replied, rubbing his eyes. "The storm kept replaying in my head." She laughed lightly. "Storms do that. They shake us up a little, make us feel something we didn't expect." Evan nodded. "Yeah, that's exactly what it felt like." They sat together at the table, sipping their coffee in comfortable silence. For a moment, it almost felt like they were the only two people in the world. Claire looked out the window and said softly, "You know, storms always remind me that even after chaos, the sun finds its way back. It's nature's way of saying, start again." Evan watched her carefully. There was something strong yet gentle about her, something that had always drawn people in. "You sound like someone who's learned that the hard way," he said. She smiled faintly. "Maybe I have." After breakfast, they stepped outside to breathe in the clean air. The garden was covered in raindrops, the grass shining like glass. Claire closed her eyes, tilting her face toward the sun. "It feels good," she murmured. Evan smiled. "You're right. It's like the world just pressed reset." They walked around the yard, talking about little things as plans after graduation. Her new art class, the book she wanted to read. The conversation flowed easily, with laughter between every pause. Yet beneath it all was still that quiet undercurrent and spoken emotion that neither dared to name. In the afternoon, Claire went back to her art studio. Evan followed, leaning against the doorway as she mixed colors. "You always look calm when you paint," he said. She looked at the canvas, brushing light strokes of gold and white. "That's because painting lets me feel without explaining. Sometimes I think words make things too complicated." Evan smiled. "I get that. Some things don't need to be said." Claire stopped painting for a moment, turning to look at him. "You've grown up, Evan," she said gently. "You see the world differently now. More quietly." He shrugged. "Maybe that's a good thing." "It is," she said. "But don't lose the part of you that still believes in possibilities." Their eyes met for a moment, soft but steady. The air seemed to slow between them, nothing uncomfortable, just honest. Then Claire turned back to her canvas, breaking the spell. "Hand me that brush," she said, smiling again. He did. And together they finished the painting a bright sunrise breaking through storm clouds. When it was done, Claire stood back, wiping her hands. "There," she said. "A reminder that everything passes, even the heavy days." "It's beautiful," Evan said. "You should call it go with the flow." She laughed. "You've really picked up my phrase, haven't you?" "Maybe it stuck," he said. By evening, the sky had turned orange. Claire made dinner, nothing fancy, just pasta and salad, and they ate on the porch as the day slipped into dusk. The sound of crickets rose from the garden, and the warmth of the fading sun brushed against their faces. "Do you ever think about the future?" Evan asked suddenly. "Sometimes," she said, "but not too far ahead. I've learned that life doesn't follow our plans no matter how carefully we make them." He nodded. "That's true. I used to think everything had to make sense. Now I just want to feel at peace." Claire looked at him quietly. "Peace is rare, Evan. If you've found it, hold on to it." They sat in silence again, watching the last streaks of sunlight fade. It wasn't awkward, it was comfortable. It's the kind of silence that only happens when words aren't needed. When it grew darker, Claire stood and stretched. "It's getting cold. Come inside." Evan followed her into the living room. The soft glow of the lamp made the space feel warmer, more intimate. Claire sat on the couch, pulling a blanket around her shoulders. "You've brought good energy into this house," she said softly. "I didn't realize how quiet it had become until you came back." He smiled, sitting across from her. "Then I'll stay a little longer." She looked up, surprised but pleased. "You'd like that?" "Yeah," he said. "It feels right." For a while, neither spoke. The house was filled with small sounds. The ticking of the clock, the wind brushing against the windows. Claire leaned back and closed her eyes. "You know," she said quietly, "I used to think I had to hold everything together all the time. But maybe it's okay to just let things be, to stop fighting life." Evan nodded. "You mean go with the flow?" Her eyes opened and she smiled. "Exactly that." The moment felt light, almost freeing. Claire's voice softened as she looked at him. "I'm enjoying this," she whispered, not as a confession, but as a truth. "The quiet, the calm, the company." Evan smiled back. "Me too." She reached for her mug and took a small sip of tea. "Then that's all that matters." The clock struck 9, and the soft hum of the night filled the space. There was no grand ending, no need for words to explain what was happening between them. It wasn't love in a romantic sense, was something deeper, built from understanding, respect, and the strange peace that comes from finding someone who sees you clearly. When Evan finally went upstairs to his room, he paused at the top of the stairs and looked back. Claire was still sitting on the couch, her eyes on the flickering light of the lamp. She looked content, more at ease than she had in years, in that quiet. Something settled inside him too, a sense that life didn't always need to be fixed or understood. Sometimes it was enough to just be outside. The rain began again, soft and steady this time, more like a lullaby than a storm. Claire listened to it for a moment, her mind calm. She smiled to herself and whispered, "Go with the flow." Upstairs, Evan lay in bed, eyes closed, the sound of rain carrying him into sleep. He didn't know what the future held, but for now, he felt something rare: peace, warmth, and the comfort of belonging. The storm had passed, the air was clean, and both hearts once restless had found stillness in the flow of life. It wasn't a love story in the usual sense. It was a story of two souls learning to heal, to listen, and to let the moment be enough. And as the night deepened, the house that had once felt empty was finally alive again, filled with quiet laughter, unspoken gratitude, and the soft reminder that even in life's storms, peace always finds its way back home.